With the rise of social media, we have seen a corresponding increase in murders and crimes committed because of it. While the internet can be a great place to connect with friends and family, it can also be a breeding ground for hate, violence, and crime. Stephen Port is accountable for the deaths of 4 men as well as numerous rapes, whom he had met online and on different social media apps. In this video, we'll show you the early life and the victims and crimes committed by the Grindr Killer Stephen Port. Is the police at fault?
Welcome to Hear This. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Port was born in Essex's Southend-on-Sea. His family relocated to Dagenham in East London when he was a year old, where he grew up and where his parents currently reside. He was labelled as a loner, and during his childhood, he experienced frequent bullying at school. Port's personality was also characterized as calm by former instructors. His neighbor claimed that he had a strange, childlike attitude and displayed odd behavior for a grown man, including playing with kids' toys. He attended art college at age 16 after finishing high school, but his parents couldn't afford it, so he spent 2 years working as a chef instead. Port's ex-girlfriend cited the fact that he had a childish demeanor as the reason their relationship had ended. He came out as gay when he was in his mid-20s. He remained with his parents until he was in his early 30s, at which point he moved into a flat by himself in Barking, London, and started working as a chef at a stagecoach bus depot there. Port made a brief appearance in a MasterChef episode as well. Because he frequented the gym, he was said to have appeared athletic at the time of the killings. He had bald spots, which he covered up in public by wearing a blonde toupee. When he met other men, the hairpiece gave him more confidence because it was securely tied. Port met his victims using online homosexual and bisexual social networks, dating or hookup apps such as Grindr, and he created bios in which he falsely claimed to have accomplished things in his past, such as pretending to have graduated from Oxford University and serving in the Royal Navy. He identified himself as a special needs teacher in another. Port raped and killed 4 of his victims at his Barking apartment by using the date rape drug gamma-hydroxybutyric acid, which he added to drinks offered to his victims. Although Port secretly used additional drugs on his victims, including amyl nitrite, Viagra, mephedrone, and methamphetamine, the prosecution claimed that post-mortem studies on the 4 young men who died proved that each had died from a drug overdose, including high quantities of crystal meth. 3 of the 4 murder victims' bodies were discovered in the Barking Cemetery of St. Margaret's Church. On June 17, 2014, Port made contact with Anthony Walgate, a 23-year-old fashion student from Hull, who occasionally worked as an escort, and offered him £800 for his services. They later met at Barking Station. In Port's apartment, Walgate was given a deadly overdose of GHB after Port had raped and drugged him. On June 19 early in the morning, Port took the body to the sidewalk outside his apartment, and dialed an ambulance on his own mobile device. He explained to the operator, without revealing his identity, that he had been driving by and had observed a young lad on the street, who was collapsed or had had a seizure or was inebriated. Port then went back to his apartment. Walgate was declared deceased just before 8 a.m. At the time, there was no proof connecting Port to Walgate's death. Between August 2014 and September 2015, Port killed 3 more men: Jack Taylor, 25, a forklift truck driver who lived with his parents in Dagenham and was from Gravesend in Kent; Gabriel Kovari, 22, a Slovakian immigrant to London who had lived briefly with Port; and Daniel Whitworth, 21, a chef from Gravesend in Kent. The second and third victims' bodies were discovered in the church's cemetery in Barking, by the same woman on separate occasions when she was out walking her dog. The body of the 4th victim was discovered in the park next to the cemetery. Whitworth's body was discovered with a bogus suicide note that Port had placed next to it. The note said that Whitworth killed himself because he felt guilty about Kovari's death, which was the previous victim. In 2015, Port was accused of committing 4 murders and 4 poisonings. However, at the Old Bailey in June 2016, further poisoning charges, rape charges, and sexual assault charges were added. He was also charged with 4 more counts of manslaughter. Port denied all allegations when appearing via video link from home prison Belmarsh. On November 23, 2016, Port was found guilty of the penetration assaults, rapes, and murders of Anthony Walgate, Gabriel Kovari, Daniel Whitworth, and Jack Taylor. He was also found guilty of the drugged-up rapes of 3 other men, 10 counts of intentionally administering drugs, and 4 sexual assaults. On all counts, he was found guilty. 11 men in total had been known victims of Port's crimes. Malcolm McAfee, Deputy Chief Crown Prosecutor for CPS London, commented on the case and said, "Over a period of 3 years, the defendant committed a series of murders and serious sexual offences against young men. Port manipulated and controlled these men through the chilling and calculated use of the drug GHB, which he administered without their permission. This was a technically challenging case, complicated by the significant amount of evidence taken from the numerous social media sites Port used." On November 25, 2016, Mr. Justice Openshaw sentenced Port to life in prison with a full life order at the Old Bailey. Port is held in custody in HMP Belmarsh. Questions have risen due to the inconsistencies and missed evidences of the police investigation, which was not until the 4th victim was discovered. In a period of just over a year starting in June 2014, the bodies of the 4 men were discovered close to Port's apartment. Walgate, the first, was discovered outside his front door, while the other 3 victims were discovered in or close to a neighboring cemetery. However, the Metropolitan Police was unable to connect the fatalities. Even though the Pink News website and the Force's LGBT Independent Advisory Committee were right to think there was a serial killer on the loose, the police told them the killings were unrelated, when the first 3 victims were thought not to have died in strange ways. A BBC One documentary that aired in March 2017 claimed that the Met's response to the fatalities was marked by a catalogue of police failings. Important witnesses were not questioned, such as Port's neighbour, who saw Port in a confused state carrying bottles of clear liquid, and a large container full of white powder when he unexpectedly paid him a visit. The neighbour also claimed to have received suspicious text messages from Port regarding Kovari. John Popp, Kovari's former landlord, performed an internet search for other suspicious deaths in the Barking neighborhood, and was shocked by the similarities between the Anthony Walgate case and those cases, particularly the locations where the bodies were discovered. However, Barking and Dagenham police did not connect the 2 cases. He called the detective at Barking and Dagenham police after hearing about Whitworth's passing, to ask whether they believed the 3 cases were connected, or may have been murder, since he was worried for his own safety. He was informed that they were not linked, and were not murder. He even offered to be interviewed because he thought he might know something about Kovari's final moves, but no one ever got in touch with him, even after he asked organizations like Pink News to contact the police on his behalf. Whitworth's body was discovered 2 weeks after Kovari's, in almost exactly the same place, and the woman who discovered both bodies said she believed Barking and Dagenham police had no idea what they were doing not to link the 2 cases. Whitworth's stepmother claims that the police misled her when they told her about his death, leading her to believe he had overdosed on drugs, despite the fact that no investigation had been conducted. They also ignored the bruises under his arms, which a coroner later stated indicated that third-party involvement could not be ruled out, according to Whitworth's stepmother. They sent a little piece of the purported suicide letter to her, and Whitworth's father, and asked him to confirm whether it was written in his handwriting, taking the reported suicide note left with his body at face value. Even though they claimed to be unsure, it was proven at trial that Barking and Dagenham police had taken this as proof that the message was written in Whitworth's handwriting, and had not sent it for expert analysis. Whitworth's father instantly remarked that he saw nothing to suggest that it had been written by his son, when the couple later saw the entire text. Additionally, the couple had inquired as to whether the police had looked into the guy I was with last night, and they were informed that it was impossible to fully examine all of the questions. His stepmother encountered what she characterized as an attitude of "it is what it is, deal with it," when she asked about appealing the open verdict, or extending the investigation. Taylor's sister also claimed that despite her brother being strongly anti-drugs, the police just informed the family that Jack is dead, and accepted the syringe in his pocket, white powder in his wallet, and needle marks on his arm as signs that he had overdosed on drugs, while alone. When she and another sister inquired for an update on the investigation 11 days after his passing, they were shocked to learn that none was being conducted by Barking and Dagenham police. Then, they did their own research and found out about the 3 other cases, but the police said there was no link. 2 weeks after Taylor's passing, the police finally consented to take the 2 sisters to the scene of his death and to Barking Station, where they informed them that CCTV footage of Taylor and another man had been discovered. The sisters were shocked that they had not been informed, and were even more shocked to learn that the police had not made an effort to identify the other man. One person called the police's attitude shocking. A sergeant later contacted them in response to their doubts about the veracity of the police report of what the footage revealed to explain that, upon inspection, the footage did not depict Taylor entering the churchyard by himself. The police initially resisted, stating that they would not typically share CCTV photographs, but eventually gave up, and 2 days later, Port was recognized from the images and detained. They then requested that pictures of the second man be made public in order to identify him. The Independent Police Complaints Commission launched an inquiry into whether 17 police officers should face discipline after Port was found guilty. In June 2022, due to claimed material flaws in its prior inquiry, the Independent Office of Police Conduct reopened investigations into how the fatalities were handled. What are your thoughts on how the police handled this case? Don't hesitate to comment below. See you in our next video. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when we have a new video. Thank you so much for watching.